Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. Take a look around any sidewalk in Seattle, and you are likely to spot a Lime e-scooter. But injuries that occur from riding them are a big problem. Coming up, we'll talk about a new technology that aims to keep people safer by directing them off the sidewalk. But first, let's get you caught up. The Seattle City Council is voting on two pieces of data center legislation today. The first would put a one-year moratorium on new data centers in the city. The second would study how new data centers would affect Seattle's electricity, water, and economy. Today's meeting begins at 2 o'clock. If you need federal disaster assistance related to last December's flooding, time is running out. The deadline to apply for individual assistance, unemployment assistance, or a low-interest small business loan is tomorrow. There are 3 ways to apply, either online, by phone, or in person at a disaster assistance center. People across 10 counties and 16 tribal nations may be eligible for the aid. And the governor is in Seattle today to talk about cell phones in schools. Governor Bob Ferguson, along with parents, teachers, and students, will be at Robert Eaglestaff Middle School at 10 a.m. He says he's making a major announcement. You can tune in on TVW. We're back with more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Seattle's first World Cup match is just days away. Tourists are expected to fill the streets for weeks, and that could mean a lot of people riding e-scooters to get to the stadiums and other popular sites in the city. But even without the World Cup crowds, Seattle transportation officials consider e-scooters and e-bikes an important part of micromobility. Last year, Seattle saw 10 million rides, a record, but scooters can be a risky choice. Harborview Medical Center treated 163 injuries from e-scooters or e-bikes in 2024, many of them head injuries, a significant increase from the year before. Recently, Seattle's Department of Transportation began requiring bike and scooter share companies like Lime to use technology to try and curb reckless riding. The company is in the process of installing AI technology on every scooter in Seattle that will sound an audible alert.
Avoid sidewalks. Avoid sidewalks. Avoid sidewalks.
Parker Dawson is Lime's senior manager for the Pacific Northwest in government relations.
In effect, if a rider is riding on a sidewalk, continues riding, not just when they're parking or first starting their ride, the device itself is able to provide alerts repeatedly until that rider either exits the sidewalk or ends the trip.
Gary Shea is a professor in the UW's Department of Human-Centered Design and Engineering. He studies behavior change. He says an alert like this is likely to work for some people.
In this case, if the issue is simply an awareness problem, that they aren't aware that they shouldn't be riding on sidewalks, then perhaps some sort of notification would be sufficient.
He says even if the warning doesn't prevent someone from riding on the sidewalk, it could help unsuspecting pedestrians from getting buzzed by a scooter.
So there's another sort of positive side benefit of this design. Perhaps it could act as a warning system for someone who's just walking by and be like, oh my gosh, there's someone riding on a scooter next to me.
Another UW researcher who's thinking about scooter safety is Stephen Mooney. He's an associate professor in UW's Department of Epidemiology. He co-authored a study in the American Journal of Public Health that looked at the burden of injuries associated with scooters and other micro-mobility devices. He's here now to talk about how alerts might help and what else can be done to help keep people safe on scooters. Thanks so much for coming in.
Of course.
Scooters and bike shares are very popular in the city, as we mentioned. Is the risk of riding a scooter different from a bike?
Yes. We don't know exactly how. There are a couple of things to note. The patterns of injuries are a little bit different. The frequency of injury is probably higher, but it's a little bit hard to know. And people who bike often bike a lot. People who scooter often have less experience. So it's hard to balance out how much experience people have.
Very interesting. Who's getting injured on scooters and why? Tell me what you know.
Scooter riders are disproportionately young, are disproportionately male, are disproportionately getting injured late at night. Broadly stereotyping, in the injury world, men are more likely to do dumb things that get them injured. So people who are injured are also disproportionately male. But scooter riders, young, male, often intoxicated, often late at night, but not exclusively that. There are injuries any time of the week, any time of the day, and any age.
Okay, and certainly when you say a lot of these accidents are happening later in the evening, that might indicate that people are out partying, having a good time.
Right. We think that there is a substitution effect where people may be taking scooters home from the bar rather than driving home from the bar, which actually, from an injury prevention standpoint, is in some ways good. At least the person you're injuring is yourself and not someone else.
Steve, what kind of injuries are we talking about when people crash out on a scooter?
It's interesting. It depends on the kind of scooter they crash out on. You may have seen around the city the Lime scooters come in a seated form and a standing form. We see injuries all over the body. You can imagine that you could fall off a scooter and break any part of your body. But the standing scooters are disproportionately face injuries. Yeah, which are brutal.
Wow.
The seated ones look more like bike injuries, generally. We haven't had a chance to dig into this as deeply as we'd like to, but there's every reason to biomechanically believe that a standing scooter makes it easier to fall onto your face. One other thing that affects injury, we see more than one person riding a scooter, anecdotally, and I think the impact of multiple people hitting the ground and hitting each other on the way down is different than what they were designed for, which is one rider at a time.
Yeah.
The other point on injuries that I wanted to make is that we know that helmets protect against head injuries, but you can imagine a typical bike helmet and whether it could protect your jaw. I would assume it cannot. And so while as an injury prevention person, I want everyone who's riding a scooter to wear a helmet, we also need to acknowledge that not all injuries will be prevented by helmets, and we need some of these other approaches as well.
And there's also a group of nurses at Harborview who have a club against scooters.
They're making sweatshirts that say anti-scooter social club, sort of following that anti-social social club black with the white font on it that you've seen around. And it's because they've seen so many scooter injuries and they're tired of dealing with them.
Yeah.
And it feels so preventable when you're a nurse. It's hard to work in the ER and not feel like you're cleaning up after people who made bad choices.
One of the reasons we're talking is because riding on the sidewalk is illegal, but a lot of people do it in the city. What kinds of things can deter certain behaviors and encourage others?
The obvious hammer for this nail is enforcement. It's not legal to ride on the sidewalk. It would be possible to send out patrols to enforce not riding on the sidewalk, ticket people, maybe warn them. I haven't talked to any cops about this, but I bet there are things they'd rather be doing than ticketing scooter riders on the sidewalk. I don't think the GPS devices on the scooters are always going to be high enough caliber to be sure a scooter is on the sidewalk. In other words, we know from places with tall buildings, it's really hard. GPSs lose track of their satellites. It's really hard to be sure that the GPS is in exactly the right place. From the scooter company's standpoint of tracking where the scooter is and telling you where it is, it's totally good enough. It can place it roughly on a block, and once you're there, you can look around and find it. But I think ticketing someone based on the GPS says you're on the sidewalk would be hard.
Okay. Now, SDOT is very interested in helping to solve this reckless scooter behavior, and they are now requiring companies like Lime to install specific technology. And in Lime's case, they're calling it Lime Vision, and what it is a little AI technology that will detect whether or not a rider is on the sidewalk. And now it will give a little stay off the sidewalk, stay off the sidewalk.
Right.
What do you think of something like that?
It's an interesting idea. I generally support it in that I think these devices should not be ridden on sidewalks. And I think giving the person who is piloting the device the opportunity to change their behavior is the clearest, best way to do this.
They are planning to install this on all scooters by, I think, the end of the year. So they're in process right now. You might hear this out on the streets. Is this kind of behavior, riding on the sidewalks, maybe being reckless in the street, due to a failure of bike scooter infrastructure, or is it something else? Because one of the reasons people ride on the sidewalk is they say they feel safer there.
Sure. Bike and scooter infrastructure in Seattle, I think, is actually pretty good compared to other cities. We're not Copenhagen or Amsterdam, but we have a pretty complete bike network. And if you want to stay primarily on the street, in my experience, most places you can, which is not true of many cities. That doesn't mean that every individual will feel safe in a bike lane. but I don't think it's an infrastructure failure. My guess would be that it's behavioral, that people sort of look at it, feel like the sidewalk is a fine place to be. They're used to walking on the sidewalk. They feel like they can ride safely, and their perception of what is safe to other people is different than my perception of I'm stepping out of the doorway and I shouldn't expect to run into a scooter here.
What do you know about what might work that maybe the city or even Lime at this point isn't considering in your, perfect world?
Yeah, I do not have the magic bullet for this. I think the technology solutions are quite interesting. The scooters do have a speed cap. It is possible to set people in speed cap mode. It might be possible to set people in speed cap mode if the sidewalk detection is good, maybe being able to say, you can't go faster than 5 miles an hour on the sidewalk, but you can go up to 15 in the street or something like that would be technologically possible, assuming that the detection works well. And similarly, they've talked about the technological solution of giving someone a discount if they take a picture of themselves wearing a helmet, for example, to sort of encourage helmet use. There may be behavioral nudges of that kind of form that could help.
That's interesting to me because what I know is that oftentimes shame will not work to change someone's behavior, right? Cracking down doesn't necessarily work. But education, encouragement, examples that could have a positive impact on people's behavior.
That's the received wisdom in public health generally, that shame is not effective. This is not the question you were asking, but I think it's super interesting to ask if shame was effective in cracking down on smoking, which is very hard to quit. And we feel as a culture much more comfortable stigmatizing smokers than I personally am comfortable with. Even though we'd really like it to be stigmatizing the behavior and not the person, I'm not sure it always plays out that way. I agree that a shame-based approach is less likely to feel right, even if it is effective, and it is possibly not effective.
Do you ride scooters?
I don't. I have ridden them once or twice. I'm mostly a bicyclist.
Yeah. What was your impression of scooter riding?
I was in the intro period, so my speed was capped at 5 miles an hour, and honestly, I felt like a dork. I was puttering along at a slower speed, basically walking speed. It made sense that the scooter was teaching me how to use it safely, and I appreciate, as a safety researcher, I appreciate that this is how they should work. My experience was, I feel really stupid using this thing. Why am I not walking?
Okay, I think you've just proved Lime's point that if they lower speeds down to 5 miles per hour for people who are not heeding the warnings that the dork factor is so high, they may just get off and walk.
Right, or maybe I would feel dorky going 5 miles an hour on the sidewalk. I'd better go 15 in the street.
Yeah.
Or better go on the street where I can go the less dorky speed.
Steve Mooney is an associate professor in UW's Department of Epidemiology. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Scoot on over to your favorite podcast app. Take some time to rate the show or share it with a friend. Today's episode was produced by Andy Hurst. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, Vaughn Jones, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. Talk to you tonight for Evening Headlines.